There's a story I rarely tell. Most folks around here believe I pulled down that old barn because it was falling apart, or for the insurance money. That's the easy answer I give, but it's not the truth. It was the winter. I was 44, divorced, and mostly alone, working my cattle in the Bozeman Hills. Just enough land to keep me busy, but not enough to hire help, except for branding season. My mornings always started the same way. Up before dawn, hot coffee warming my green thermos, stiff boots, and the clatter of that old diesel engine in the yard. Every single day, the same. North of my house stood the barn, the tired old thing, leaning like it had fought the wind for too long. My grandfather built it with his own hands. I hadn't kept animals in there for years, but I never got rid of it. I suppose I liked it being there, even though it was just one more thing to fret over. My old dog, Buddy, a healer, always gave it a wide berth. Not since a raccoon had gotten to him that one winter. He'd halt, nose the air, and turn around. One crisp morning, I took a shortcut behind the barn and froze. Footprints. A single set, sharp in the fresh snow. Large, like a man. They circled the barn twice, then stopped beneath the north window. No car tracks on the main road. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe a surveyor, but the image of someone standing there, peering into my barn, stayed with me. That day, I grabbed some spare wood and hammered a couple of boards across the window frame. It looked rough, but I thought it would hold. That night, I slept on the living room couch. Not out of fear, I told myself, but just to listen. The TV was low. Buddy snored softly on his mat. Every hour, I'd get up, check the front door, gaze at the barn. Nothing stirred. Morning arrived. Coffee, boots, the stock tank, frozen solid. I walked to the barn, and my stomach dropped. One of the boards was gone. Not broken, but simply lifted away. The nails lay neatly in the snow. New prints pressed under the window, deeper than before, like whoever it was had stood there for a long time, just watching. That feeling, more than anything, made me angry. I found longer screws, a strong chain. I secured the window good and tight this time. I even moved my trail camera from the pond, strapping it high on a cottonwood tree, aimed right at the barn. Fresh batteries. Empty card. Fine, I thought. Come back now, and I'll have your picture. The next morning, I checked. Same story. One board gone. Inside, on the windowsill, was a damp coffee ring. The chain was still there, but someone had tied small twine knots all around it. Little loops I hadn't made. Knots that would lift the chain's weight, just enough if you pulled them right. That small detail, it shook me more than anything else. Whoever this was, they weren't just wandering by chance. They were careful. They were practicing. I checked the trail camera. It had captured snowflakes, a magpie, then nothing. The screen showed low battery at 2:13 a.m. Then it simply stopped. The batteries had been new. I couldn't explain it. I picked up the phone and called the sheriff. The dispatcher said they'd write it down, maybe send someone to drive by. It didn't give me much hope. That night, Buddy didn't sleep at all. He just lay there, head up, ears perked. Around midnight, a storm knocked out the electricity. Moonlight lit the snow outside like a sheet of glass. I sat on the couch, trying desperately to stay awake. Then I heard it, a sharp ping, like a nail falling onto wood and rolling to a stop. Soft, but very clear. My skin felt cold. I grabbed my flashlight and rifle, then crossed the yard. The barn loomed ahead, all boards in place, except one. Then my light hit the window, and there it was, a face pressed against the glass from inside, forehead touching, breath fogging a white circle, eyes fixed on me. Human eyes, unblinking. My light didn't surprise him. He simply stared back, calm, as if this meeting had been planned. "Hey," I called out. The face slowly slid out of the beam. Footsteps shifted inside, then a thud from the back. I'd completely forgotten that old rear door even existed. I went in anyway. A stupid move, I know. The big south doors groaned loudly. My light beam swept across dusty rafters, into empty corners. Then I found the rear latch, unhooked. The door was pulled shut neatly, like someone being polite on their way out. I walked all the way around the barn. Prints led from that door toward the ridge, then vanished where the wind had swept them away. Deputies arrived about 40 minutes later. Young guys. They found more than I had. A wire snare, hidden under my kitchen window. A stack of wood wedges, clearly cut for prying, tucked under a tarp near the barn. Instant coffee, painter's tape, a grocery bag folded carefully, and a pencil chewed down to nothing. They followed the tracks until the ridge winds wiped them clean. They wrote up the report, told me to get more outdoor lights. One of them asked what time I usually woke up at night. I didn't want to answer, but I told him around 2. He just nodded, like it fit with something he already knew. That wasn't the last time I saw the face. It showed up twice more, once in full daylight, which was somehow worse than night. Pale, still eyes locked on mine. Once at dusk, his lips slightly parted as if whispering, but no sound ever reached me. Each time he stayed steady under the light, calm, absolutely certain. That was it for me. I called a guy with a flatbed truck and told him to bring the barn down. He didn't ask why. I ordered a steel shipping container instead. Steel can't be pried apart like old wood. Before they tore it down, I kept one board with the pry marks and hung it in my mudroom. I tell people it's just spare lumber. The truth is, I keep it because I can't bring myself to throw it away. A neighbor a mile down the road later found a tarp camp in their line of trees. A coffee jar, snares, scraps of tape, and footprints leading toward my place one night, then back the next. No arrest, no name, just gone. Even now, I sometimes wake at 2:13 a.m. Sometimes I hear a nail drop, though there's nothing left for it to fall from. But he's gone now, buried somewhere near the fence line. I miss the way he'd look at me, like he knew things before I did. What truly stays with me isn't the face itself. It's how incredibly calm it was, standing there, knowing I saw him, and not moving an inch. That kind of certainty, it doesn't need to explain itself. I don't take barns for granted anymore. Out here you can build walls, but you can't outsmart someone willing to learn your routine. That's the hard lesson I live with every winter. I always forget how dark Vermont truly is, until I'm standing right in it again. In the city, darkness has color, signs, headlights, constant noise. Out here, it feels like the sky seals shut. My name's Claire. I'm 29, and I make my living producing podcasts, usually from my laptop in whatever city I'm in. In October 2020, my mom wanted old attic boxes cleared, and I needed a break from my tiny apartment and all those podcast deadlines. Dad picked me up at the airport, shoving cider donuts into my lap before I could protest. The house looked exactly as it did when I was in high school. White siding, a slate roof, and that motion sensor on the porch that still refuses to turn on when it should. That squeaky screen door has been next on Dad's fix list since I told them I'd take a walk before bed. It's my go-to jet-lag trick. The old loop trail behind the house takes maybe 20 minutes if you're not trying to look like you're in a movie. Mom told me to wear a hat. Dad offered his old lantern. I just waved my phone instead. Recording sounds is a habit of mine. I keep folders full of subway breaks, laundromat hums, the scrape of ice scoops. So I slipped my phone into record mode and started the loop. I walked past the compost pile, then down the dip where water gathers around the old stone wall. The porch light finally flickered on behind me, as if it had to think about it first. That's when I spotted the first light, warm and low, not a porch light, more like a lantern, flickering faintly behind the trees. Then another, deeper in, then one off to the side. They looked placed, not random. I quickly went through my thoughts. No fireflies in October, no car headlights would stay that steady, and no neighbor would string lights back there without mom declaring war. I whispered hello, and instantly regretted it. The sound just fell flat, as if the woods swallowed it whole. I left the phone running. Later, when I boosted the audio, I heard faint ticks, uneven, like someone shifting their pace, maybe with a zipper pull or a ring tapping metal. A human rhythm. I called out louder. Every light went out, not fading, but cut. The kind of silence that presses in on you. That's when I heard an exhale, very close to my right ear, warm enough to feel it. Then the tiny click of a lantern knob turning, but no flame appeared. I didn't call out again. I just said nope, and turned around, heading back quickly. By the time my yard came into view, the porch sensor finally lit up. I thought that was the end of it, but as I stepped onto the porch, I saw them again. One lantern snapped on deep in the trees, another lit lower, closer to the driveway, a third at knee height, exactly where I had just walked. They didn't look like guides, they looked like barriers. Inside, I told my parents what happened. Dad said, "Kids playing camp." Mom listed off neighbors' kids, half of them out of state, one with a broken arm. I played them my recording. Wind, my breath, the faint ticks, and then, after I boosted it, a single whispered shh. Not my own. Dad asked, "Your phone can do that," which completely missed the point. He insisted we check. We walked back with his lantern, his voice calling, "Okay." Now into the dark. No answer, just the faint smell of paraffin, and leaves shifting where no one had stepped. The next day, the game warden came. He found them, not me, tea light tins, burned out and tucked under roots. Then more further in, finally clear fishing lines strung chest high between trees, strong and almost invisible. Another line lower, knee height, a lattice meant to guide or slow someone. Control, not decoration. Kids rehearse dumb things, but his tone changed once he saw the lines. "You did right, going back." That night, I didn't walk. I stood on the porch, watching the light sensor flicker like it had a mind of its own. In bed, I kept replaying the recording. The whisper sat under my voice, like it wanted to be heard without being found. I could have made a podcast episode around it, called it "The Woods Answered Back," but it felt wrong to use it. The third morning, the warden texted Dad. More tins, more fishing line. He'd taken them down. He'd do extra patrols for a while. Mom pushed pancakes. Dad grumbled about lantern, and I pretended nothing had truly stuck with me. But the truth is, it did. Here's what stays with me: the way those lights were placed. From a distance, they looked like an invitation. Up close, like a corridor. String lines where mouths and knees would be. Lights snapping off the second I spoke, as if on cue. And then three reappearing behind me, in front, at shin height, when I thought I was safe. You can build a sensible story out of it. Teenagers daring each other, someone practicing a prank, a ritual that didn't quite finish. Or you can admit the other thing, that it was set up for someone like me, that it was meant to test how I would move, how I would respond. I still keep the clip on a hard drive. I never aired it. Sometimes I play it back, just to confirm it's really there. The ticks line up like footsteps. The whisper still looks like shoof on the sound wave. I've shown no one else. When people ask what Vermont in the fall is like, I tell them the truth. Leaves, cider, tourists. I don't mention lantern. I walk the loop in daylight now, when the porch light stays off, because it knows it's supposed to. I track plants for a living, which sounds like I follow them around, but what I actually do is measure species, how much ground they cover, when they flower, and how well they serve. In the summer of 2019, I was outside Abilene, Texas, on a grant to study plants that handle dry weather well. The rancher who rented me a space said you can have the old travel trailer out by the fence line. My budget said yes before I did. The trailer had working air conditioning, a mini fridge where I kept my plant samples in paper bags, and linoleum peeling at the edges, like it wanted to escape. The water ran rusty at first, but it cleared up. It was the kind of place you put up with, because it kept the bugs out, and you were only supposed to be there for the facts, not comfort. I'd lay out measuring lines across the pasture, stopping every 15 feet to write down what was there. Compass directions, notes about plant type. Sometimes a flower would just be starting to open, so I'd mark it and return at sunset. By 9, my shirt clung to me like I'd jumped in a watering trough. Cicadas hammered at my ears, until I forgot what quiet sounded like. By noon, the heat was thick like syrup, so I'd retreat to the trailer, enter my notes, drink water until I could taste plastic. Evenings I'd rinse samples, line them along the counter, and Skype the lab once a week, so I wouldn't forget how to talk to other people. By the 3rd week, the ranch hands treated me as the strange lady who measured weeds and talked into her phone. They were polite in that Texas way, straightforward, not flashy. One afternoon, I mentioned I'd be out late to catch a dusk flowering plant. The older ranch hand said, "You'll see her hat first." Another one grinned, without humor. "Walks the fence. Midnight lady." They said it like they were passing down an old story they'd always known. I laughed. "Coyotes don't wear hats." The older one just looked at me. "You'd be surprised." At first I thought nothing of it. Local legends are as common as barbed wire out there. But one morning, I saw footprints overlapping mine from the day before. Not boot prints, but thin-soled, light, small, yet not child-sized. They led toward the tall grass near the trailer. The next morning, a few of my measuring flags weren't where I'd left them, still standing upright, but shifted by inches, always toward the trailer. I checked my coordinates. My memory isn't romantic. I measured. They had truly moved. That night, I was in the trailer, the AC rattling, paperwork spread across the counter. Around 1:11 a.m., I heard soft footsteps outside, light, calm, not scuffing like boots. They paused when I sat up, resumed when I lay back down. They weren't coyotes, too regular. The next day, the flags had moved again, same direction. When I mentioned it, the older ranch hand just nodded. "She favors the quiet ones," he said. The other one silently left a whistle on my trailer step. That night, I saw the shadow. The curtain was thin, and the brim of a hat passed across it. My phone camera refused to focus through the glass. Morning brought more shifted flags, and I started sleeping in my boots, flashlight ready. I told myself I'd get through the last week of data, and then the worst moment came at the sink. I was brushing my teeth at the counter, the only faucet in the trailer that ran clear enough to use. The outside light was gone. The glass had already turned dark, reflective. At first I just saw myself, but when I leaned a little closer, trying to rinse my mouth, my reflection shifted, and I realized I wasn't just seeing me. She was outside, not a trick of the glass. An old woman standing in the dark, inches from the window, hat brim low, a cardigan hanging loose, her eyes fixed directly on me, her mouth slightly open, as if she were listing names under her breath. She didn't blink. I jerked back so fast, my heel caught the edge of the rug. The cup slipped from my hand, water splashing across the counter, and I hit the floor hard. My elbow smacked the ground. When I scrambled up and looked again, she was gone. I swung the flashlight beam around, and there was nothing but tall grass and dust. The sheriff came and recorded it as trespassing. He said, "Folks get turned around at night, not at a sink window. They don't." He told me to keep things lit. Then he drove off. I moved my work to dawn. The heat was harder to bear, but daylight felt safer. At first light one morning, I nearly tripped over a milk crate, set under the sink window, upright, carefully placed. My footprints from the night before had been stepped in. That was it. I called the rancher. He came with his nephew. They looked at the crate, the screen, the footprints, and apologized with their silence. He said he'd sit in his truck down the fence line that night. I said I was leaving a day early. He didn't argue.
I packed my samples tightly, triple bagged. At 1:11 a.m., I was awake, waiting, but nothing came. No footsteps, no hat-brimmed shadow, just cicadas pressing their noise back in. I left before the sun was fully up. The nephew followed me to the county road, lifting a hand out the window. Half we've got it, half we don't. Back home weeks later, I received a link. County news. Woman found wandering fields at night. The photo was grainy, taken from a distance, hat brim low. Relatives said she'd been walking for decades, entering houses through unlocked windows. No threat to public. The caption read, "What I hold on to most isn't her face, it's the pattern." Flags nudged closer, footprints overlapping mine. Silence, where cicadas should have been. Warnings, people ask why I didn't confront her. Because my body told me not to. That's enough. I write everything down when I'm in the backcountry. Graphite doesn't quit when batteries do, and a notebook will take the rain better than a phone. September 2018, Western Pennsylvania. I was hiking solo, a 3-day loop for photos, and some time to myself. I had my usual kit: stove, bare hangline, a small backpack as backup, camera body wrapped in a bandana to stop glare, lens in a wool hat, so it wouldn't clink against metal, a few tortillas, jerky, oatmeal packs, peanut butter, instant noodles. I don't carry a gun. Being prepared and careful are my best insurance. Before leaving the trailhead, I texted my sister my plan. She answered with a thumbs up and 2 knife emojis, her way of saying, "Be smart." I signed the trail register at 9:12 a.m., clear and plain. My name, The Loop, 2 nights, Wednesday return.
The morning was cool, the sky high and clean. Oak leaves crunching underfoot, their acorns turning the trail into a path of marbles. Birds chirped in bursts. Squirrels made a ruckus in the leaves. For the first few hours, it was exactly what I'd come for. Quiet, dappled light, no people, just afternoon. I stepped off the main trail onto a mossy old logging road. I stopped for photos. The seed heads glowed like tiny lights in the cut-down area. When I stood and took a few more steps, I saw a boot print crossing over mine, not next to it, but right over my heel. Then another, a heel pressed cleanly into the same dirt, fresh enough that the loose soil on top hadn't dried. My first thought, maybe I'd looped back onto my own path. No, my track was clear. Second thought, someone just passed through. I listened. Only a jay. Only the faint trickle of hidden water. No trekking poles clicking. No voices. Just that single overlapping print. I took a photo of it with my phone. Geotag on. Told myself it was a coincidence, and moved on. 40 minutes later, I saw another. Same thing. Someone had stepped exactly where I had earlier, drifting just an inch to the left this time. That was when the hairs on my calves tingled, before my mind could even form the words. I camped that night on a small hill with a ridge view. Good trees for hanging food. A steady breeze. I did the usual routine. Stove off. No fire. Water boiled and filtered. Ramen noodles with peanut butter and jerky. I took a few pictures of the sunset, tucked the camera by my head, inside the tent, the bear bag line thrown and clipped. The kind of camp I could feel proud of in daylight. Around 11, I woke up. I heard it first as a question. Was that wind? Was that me? No, it was breathing. Human close. Just on the other side of the tent fabric. Nylon carries sound in a strange way. Each exhale was muffled by the material but still very clear. I lay there perfectly still, checking my gear in my mind. My knife clipped to the bag on the ridgeline, headlamp looped on my wrist, phone at 50% battery, but no signal. I shifted once to ease a leg, and a twig cracked outside. Perfect timing, like whoever it was had been waiting for me to move. The breathing didn't stop. I don't know if it was 10 minutes or 30. It was hard to tell. It just went on. Then it was gone. By morning I found scuffed leaves behind the tent. No clear print, but the ground looked disturbed. My bear hang was untouched. I broke camp more carefully than usual, folding things without letting them snap or clink. By midday, I found a twig structure on the trail. 3 sticks leaned into a triangle. Above it, a strand of camouflage paracord, tied knee-high between 2 thin trees. Not tight enough to trip, but clearly there. A marker. I walked a wide circle around it, moving quieter than I liked. Later, under a rock on the path, I found a note. Cheap. Lined paper torn. 2 words. Nice wrote. My name underneath it. Spelled correctly. Lifted straight from the register. Blocky handwriting. Heavy pressure. Not mine. That settled it. Whoever this was had read the log, tracked my loop, and stayed close enough to step into my prints. I set up a fake camp before dusk. I chose a dip in the land with water nearby, made a fake fire ring, scattered a few rocks for ash, spread my sleeping pad to leave an imprint, draped my tent body, even poured ramen water into the dirt, so it smelled like dinner. A bandana folded over a rock where a pillow would be. The bear line tied off as if I had just taken my food down. From 20 yards away, it would look like someone had settled in for the night. Then I left, backtracking softly, cutting up into the thick mountain laurel. I chose a high ledge with a fallen tree for cover, belly down behind it, camera on my chest, headlamp strap on my wrist, phone on silent. I ate 2 almonds to give myself something to chew, then stayed absolutely still. Dusk crept in slowly. Animals kept their usual chorus. Chipmunks, a barred owl, the wind. Then came a different sound. Leaf movement without wind. A human rhythm. He entered from the east, not the trail. A camo cap, not shiny. He moved like someone who had practiced disappearing. He went straight to the tent, stood where my head imprint was, leaned forward, and put his mouth to the mesh opening, exhaling one long breath into where my face should have been. I called out from above, "Hey," not a shout, just loud enough. He didn't jump, didn't look up. He turned toward the sound and walked into the brush, not in a hurry, like he had already learned what he came to know. That night, I moved again, tucked against a rock face with the hollow ground below me. Around midnight I heard it once more, breathing, this time farther off, like someone keeping their distance, but making sure I knew they hadn't left. After an hour, it faded with the wind. At the trailhead the next day, a ranger was checking the register. I gave him the short version. He listened, then walked back half a mile with me. Off the path, we found 2 thin trees rigged with small snares, cord knotted cleanly, and a tree with a dozen shallow marks carved into its trunk, all at chest height. The ranger paused, then mentioned a bow hunter who had gone missing the fall before. His truck still at the trailhead, no sign of him since. No answers. They didn't say it was connected. They also didn't say it wasn't. Back home, I emptied my last camera card. 3 frames I didn't remember taking were at the very end. The autofocus had been searching on a shadow, catching a texture that looked like fabric before sliding away. Nothing sharp, just hints, enough to know the lens had tried. Since then, I still hike, but my solo trips end at noon. I join groups for longer journeys. My camp is more out in the open, and I don't leave a note in the register without thinking about who else might be reading it. I don't know what he wanted to test me, to practice, to see how close he could get. All I know is for 2 days, a man in camo moved just behind me, stepped in my tracks, exhaled into my tent, and walked away when I called out. Not because he was scared, but because he had already decided his part was finished. After Mark died, people told me I should move. A smaller place, less to care for, fewer dark corners for the night to linger in. But the house near Ogden was ours. The girls knew every creak in the floor, and every drafty window, and I needed things to stay the same more than I needed less work. So I stayed. By June 2020, I'd found a routine that helped me keep my sanity. Afternoons were chaos. Snacks, coloring, playground scrapes, small fights over dolls. Evenings had a pattern the 3 of us relied on. Bath, pajamas, brushing teeth, 2 bedtime stories. We'd bargain, but it was always too. The Fox nightlight would come on, glowing orange against the wall. I'd sit on the edge of their beds for a few minutes after lights out. Then I'd carry the laundry basket to the couch, fold until the pile was neat, and call that my exercise for the Diesel, our Belgian Malinois, usually stretched out near the back door, head on his paws, still as stone, watching like it was his duty. Diesel came to us 6 months earlier. After the funeral, Ethan, my brother-in-law, is in K9 law enforcement. He showed up with Diesel and said, "I can't replace a person, but I can give you someone who understands a job." Diesel wasn't a puppy. He already knew more about obedience than I did. He slipped into our lives like he'd been waiting for us. The girls built a blanket fort over him. That first week, he didn't even twitch. He sleeps inside every night, always has. That first week of June, everything was normal, until Friday night. At 2:17 a.m., Diesel lifted his head and growled, aimed directly at the back door. It was enough to stop me cold. His body was rigid, ears up, nose fixed. The wind chimes weren't moving. The house was completely still. He didn't lunge, didn't move closer, just held the space as if saying, "This is the line." I lay there listening. After a minute he settled back down, but not fully. His eyes stayed open, tracking something. In the morning when I let him out, he sprinted across the yard straight to the barn. Normally he runs a big loop, checks the fence line, sniffs around the cottonwood tree. Not that morning. He went right to the barn, circled it once, then trotted back to me. His chest was high, tail stiff. It felt like he had just reported something important. Saturday night, same thing. 2:17 a.m. The growl. Sunday morning, same sprint to the barn, same circle. By Monday night I was already awake. When it started, he stood at the back door again, body taut, every line of him angled outward. Tuesday morning I walked out myself. The barn was just for storage. Old tools, chicken feed, bins of holiday decorations, the sled that breaks every winter. The doors were the padlock I'd put on the side door last month was still there, but the feed bag was sliced open across the top, a perfectly straight line. I told myself I'd been careless with scissors. I clipped it closed, shook my head at myself, and went back inside. That night he didn't even pretend to rest. He lay in the hall with his body angled, so he could see both the girl's door and the back door. His chin was on his paws, but his eyes never closed. Wednesday morning I noticed the padlock had a faint crescent of rubbed paint. Paint kiss, my dad used to say when something new had been handled. That was when I called Ethan. He keeps doing it, I said. Every night, just past 2 a.m., growls at the door. In the morning, he runs straight to the barn. The feed bag was cut. Now the lock looks used. Ethan was quiet. Finally he said, "He's telling you a story. Let him finish it." "What does that mean?" "Don't talk him out of it just because you're tired. If it's nothing, he'll stop. If it's something, he'll keep telling you until you understand." "Should I let him out at night?" "Not yet. Wait for daylight. If you do release him, release with a purpose, and don't go out empty-handed." I kept thinking about that. Diesel wasn't barking or panicking. He was warning, steady, patient. Thursday night, he planted himself in the hall again. I tried to coax him back to the couch. He didn't budge. He stayed like a line drawn between my daughters and whatever was out there. Friday morning, he ran to the barn again. This time, he darted back to me, then to the barn, then back again, agitated. When I went to check, I found another feed bag cut open, another jug toppled. It didn't look like raccoons. It looked like someone living quietly. I stood there, realizing how long a man could survive on feed, hose water, and endless patience. I called Ethan again. He was even quieter this time. "If you release him," he said, "make sure you really mean it." Saturday morning, I made the tough call. I asked my neighbor Carol if she could take the girls for pancakes. She said, "Bring them in their slippers." She didn't ask questions, but she understood me well. After they left, Diesel paced by the back door until I clipped on his long. His whole body was saying, "Now." I opened the door and said the word Ethan had taught me, "Seek." Diesel launched like a shot, streaking into the barn. One sharp bark echoed, then silent. I grabbed the handgun from the lockbox, checked it the way Mark had taught me, flashlight in the other hand, and dialed 911 on speakerphone.
Then I went in. I stepped into a cloud of straw dust. The beam from my light danced through it like thick fog. Diesel was in the side room, braced over a man on the concrete floor. He had the guy pinned. That man wasn't going anywhere. Diesel had his forearm in his jaws and wasn't letting go. The man's free hand hovered near his waistband, where a pistol grip stuck out. Diesel kept him absolutely still, his body pressed down like a heavy weight. I forced the words out, flat and firm, though my hands were shaking. "Don't move." The man muttered something I couldn't quite hear. Diesel shifted, not tearing, just pressing harder. "Out," I commanded. Diesel didn't release. "Good." I gave the practiced cue Ethan had drilled into me. Diesel unclamped, pulled back, and planted himself across the man's shoulders, muzzle at his ear, vibrating with readiness. The deputies arrived minutes later, guns drawn, but calm. They secured the weapon first, cuffed the man, and praised Diesel with careful, soft words. He didn't relax until I gave him his final release command. They found more in the barn: a blanket rolled behind feed bales, emptied soda bottles, a flashlight, rope, zip tie. He had been living there, waiting, watching. Turns out he had a record: felonies for home invasions, robbery, 2 cases with the word hostage in them. He'd been planning. Ethan pulled up not long after. Having heard the call, he crouched next to Diesel, checking his teeth, his jaw, his body. "You did your job," he said, his voice tight. Diesel leaned into his chest like he'd been waiting for that exact moment. The deputies later told me they didn't know how long he'd been watching the house. They found tools and signs that he'd been getting ready. I don't let myself picture the other version of the ending. The girls only know the lighter version of the story. They came home to Carol saying Diesel was very brave. They hugged him until he groaned happily. In the end, those growls were Diesel telling me in his own language, "Listen, pay attention." And I did. That night, Diesel slept like a rock, and I sat on the couch in silence, just watching him. That dog, he had saved all 3 of us. If these dark countryside stories made your skin crawl like they did mine, remember to hit that like button, subscribe so you never miss another scary tale, and let me know in the comments how you would have handled these terrifying situations. And if you think the quiet countryside is unsettling, just wait until you hear about the people offering free rides. Click now to watch 4 disturbing hitchhiking horror stories. Believe me, the next time you see a thumb out on the roadside, you'll think twice. Thanks for watching.